Hey everyone. I wanted to talk about this, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it yesterday or the other day because I was kind of trying to rest up. I was out and about and then going to work with my brother-in-law, so like I will be doing tonight. And basically I read this thing online. I basically read this thing online, if you will, and it was basically by TNAnews.com, and if I find the link, I'll provide it in the description box. It basically talks about the Hogan Bischoff Era, and it states basically how it seems TNA, along with all the things that they're doing, are trying to forget about that era. They're trying to act as if that era never existed, never happened. And when I read this article, this guy has a good point. You see, they're trying to forget something that was 4 years in the making. 4 years. 4 years of things that happened that were positive and negative. The positives, of course, were, as anybody noticed, you had guys like Bobby Roode, Austin Aries, Willie Ray. Those kind of guys finally getting an opportunity to shine and be the stars that they were meant to be, and be given the opportunity to run with the ball, be given the ball and run with it and score. Bobby Roode, TNA champion. Austin Aries, TNA champion. And whether you like him or not, Bully Ray, TNA champion. These are guys, even Chris Sabin in the winding down era of TNA champion. Or not TNA, but the Hogan Bischoff era, TNA champion. Production went up big time. They took Impact on the road, which was a positive at first. But with the positives come the negatives. With the positives come the negatives. You see, the negatives, of course, is that with Hogan and Bischoff, not only do you bring some strong positives, like I mentioned, some possible strong positives, like I mentioned, but you also bring some negatives. You also bring some baggage with them that they're known for. When it comes to Bischoff, behind the scenes or not, Bischoff's the kind of guy that, as some people have reported, loves factions. You put him in a position of power in a wrestling company, whether it's creative, executive, doesn't matter. If he's got some kind of pull to say what he feels is going to work, what he feels is going to be hot for the company, it's going to put the company on top, more than likely you're going to get factions being formed and being established in the company as the first thing to come out of his mouth. We had Immortal. We had Fortune. We had Aces and Eights. We had these factions. And why? Because Bischoff feels factions help a company grow, help them succeed, help them to get noticed. With Fortune and Immortal, you can kind of understand that maybe they were trying to recapture the magic of NWO and the Four Horsemen. But it didn't work. Especially when you have two guys that were basically part of the company when you arrived, and then decided to waver off and go back to WWE and go elsewhere, if you will, because they pretty much saw the writing on the wall. I mean, the thing is with Bischoff, he pretty much, whether the guy likes to admit it or not, whether anybody that supports him likes to admit it or not, Bischoff's the kind of guy that thinks, hey, if it worked once, it'll work again. You know, like, if it worked to help WCW, it's going to work and help this company. And the thing is, TNA is not WCW. And that's the one thing a lot of people were trying to point out. TNA is not WCW. You know? You know, they're not WCW. They're not competing on the same level as them on a Monday night against WWE. They're not doing that. And the fact is, just because you think it worked for that company, it doesn't mean it's going to work again. But give them credit. They tried to rekindle that magic. I mean, they came up with everybody's admitted this. A lot of people have admitted. They came up with a very intriguing vignette. They came up with a very intriguing angle and promo of 10-10-10. And back in 2010 saying, they're coming at this time. They're coming, they're coming, they're coming. You didn't know who it was. You thought it was an outside force. You thought, I mean, rumors and names and stuff were all coming about of who was behind the 10-10-10. And then you find out exactly what it was. The 10-10-10 was basically, hey, they're coming, the remake or rebirth of NWO in the form of Immortal. That's what it was. The NWO reincarnation in Immortal was coming. And then you add in the Fortune faction, and you're basically trying to recreate NWO straight through, because you have a majority of the roster on your side. And if that's not enough, folks, you then lose the potential of having what would have been your storyline at that time, which you tried to recapture just recently. You see, originally, the plan was for the Main Event Mafia to reform and face Immortal and Fortune. That didn't happen because you had Kevin Nash and Booker T go back to WWE. So what did they do? They improvised. They said, you know what? Why don't we just have this group known as Fortune, which consists basically of 4 TNA originals that have been here for many years, almost since the beginning. Let's have them, and let's add in Christopher Daniels, just in case. And let's have them feud with Immortal. And there was your answer to WCW representation. You see, the positives, like I said, taking Impact on the road, getting more of a wider audience, good idea. At first. It was a good idea at first. Good idea. Production, obviously noted, went up and everything. And if you're a fan of it, yes, you had a traditional 4-sided ring. But the thing is, with Impact Wrestling, you still had major baggage coming with Hogan and Bischoff. Again, the negatives were the fact that you had factions. Some had the potential to be good, and in the end they just dropped off. They didn't succeed. Because basically, when people looked at Immortal, they looked at Fortune, they looked at Aces and Eights, they looked at nothing more than a NWO reincarnation with Immortal, a Four Horsemen reincarnation with Fortune, and another NWO incarnation in Aces and Eights. I mean, that's all you had, basically. You had an Immortal. I mean, basically, that's all you had. These were nothing more than reincarnations. And for a while, people did get behind them, the newer fans. But when they started doing their history, obviously, the research, they started seeing the resemblance. And they're saying, you know what, this is just that group from the same kind of idea and faction and group from years ago. And you see, that's the one thing about wrestling companies. It doesn't matter if it's TNA or WWE or Ring of Honor. They don't get it that fans nowadays, thanks to the internet, pretty much see what's going on, pretty much know what's going on, and are saying, hey, look, the What you're trying to do is remake something that cannot be remade. Here's what you do. Think outside the box. Think originality. And again, like I said, I'm not saying everything that Bischoff and Hogan did was bad, behind the scenes or on camera. It wasn't. They did some positives. But the thing is, there were some negatives. There were some negatives. You know, you take a look at the X Division. The X Division, once again, was getting treated like a joke. And once again, you had to have somebody come out and say, it's nothing more than cruiserweights. And that was Bischoff. First you had Team 3D, you had Nash, and now you had Bischoff. Basically, anytime you have somebody that looks at something like the X Division and thinks, this is what put your company on the map, are you serious? Storyline-wise, they're going to be like, it's nothing but a joke. And then one thing that really was a negative, and in fact I looked at it as a negative, and a lot of other fans looked at it as a negative, was the fact that Bischoff, I guess obviously he was the one that influenced this, decided to put a weight limit on the X Division. A weight limit on the X Division. It's like, are you serious? Might as well just go out and call your damn X Division title the Cruiserweight title. The point is, folks, there were some negatives. And taking away the weight limit of the X Division, a negative. You know, in the eyes of some, replacing the six-sided ring with the traditional four-side was a bit of a negative. Others saw it as a positive. Another negative, always featuring factions. It's like, enough with the factions. Come up with something different. And then the biggest negative of all, but give them credit because they attempted it, the biggest negative of all was going live and taped on Monday nights against Raw. It was not going to happen. But they attempted it for a while. They attempted it for a while. It was an experiment that they attempted on and failed. And how did they attempt to fail on it? Real simple. They basically tried to do, again, just like they tried to do with Immortal. You know, just like they tried to do with Immortal. But like I said, just like they tried to do with Immortal, and even Fortune, where they tried to recapture that magic of NWO and the Horsemen. The thing is, folks, they tried to do the same thing on January 4th of 2010, and it didn't work. It bombed. It failed. And how did they try to rekindle the magic? By doing exactly what WCW did with Nitro. Nitro was always having a history of you never knew who was going to show up on Nitro. You never knew who was going to jump ship. And of course, in one night, you have Val Venus, you have Kennedy, you have Rob Van Dam. You know, you have several names. You have the Nasty Boys, all show up and try to basically try to remake a name for themselves in TNA. They try to go for that. They try to go for that last. They try to go for that last run. That one. They try to capture that magic one last time, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because pretty much what fans, long-time standing TNA fans saw was nothing more than TNA turning into WCW and turning into an old-timer's home in the eyes of some. It's like, oh, you couldn't get it done? You couldn't get a job back in WWE? Or you couldn't get any work in Japan? Why the heck do we need you? And if you think that was one of the big negatives, then of course you have to put the band back together, which, again, only works if you do it right. And they tried to put the band back together, have similar music and stuff, or whatever. You try to put the band back together, and how do you do this? Oh, let's see. You do exactly what you did in WCW. You put the tag team titles, no offense, because these guys have done a lot for this business, but you put the tag team titles on Hall and Nash. And you basically make anybody look at his face to make him look like the nothing, like the nobodies. And how long did that last? It didn't last too long, did it? The fact is, again, there were some strong positives. Do not get me wrong on that. We all know those positives. We know that we know positive-wise, we saw a lot of new faces being pushed and given a chance to run with the ball and score with it as TNA champion. We saw that. We saw production values go up. We saw TNA finally get out of the impact zone and positively try to make an impact on the road. But again, with positives come negatives. And the negatives were the fact that Bischoff and Hogan, along with TNA's help, tried to rekindle and recapture magic and nostalgia from years ago. It is the kind of magic and nostalgia that you can only capture once in a lifetime. You know, with the band and Immortal and Aces and Eights and Fortune, you try to recapture with Immortal and the band and even Aces and Eights, you try to recapture that NWO magic, it's not going to work. It's only once in a lifetime. Same with Fortune. You try to recapture that Four Horsemen evolution mentality, it's not going to work. Those two things were once in a lifetime for this, for when they were, for the times that they were around. The Horsemen were a once in a lifetime deal in WCW. Evolution a once in a lifetime deal in WWE. So you're not going to be able to recapture something that people have already seen, no matter how you do it. I mean, you could put AJ, you could put Kazarian, you could put Beer Money in the positions of a Flair and Anderson, or like a Flair and Anderson, a Wyndham and a Vicious, if you will, or a Blanchard. Yeah, that's what you could put Styles in the position of a Flair. You could put Kazarian in the position of Wyndham, if you will. You could put Rude and Storm, and you can make them your Blanchard and your Anderson team of your Horsemen. You could do that, and you could put Ric Flair in your J.J. Dillon position, but it's not going to be the same. People have already seen that. They've already seen that. And when people already see it, they don't get behind it as much. They don't get behind it as much. You can add in Daniels like they've done before. But still, people won't get behind it because they've seen it. And again, the Horseman deal was once in a lifetime generation. No matter what members switched in and out, it was still a once in a lifetime deal that you can only capture once in a lifetime. Same with the NWO. That's why a lot of that was kind of backfiring on them. Just like when they tried to go live and tried to go, head to head with Raw on Monday nights. January 4th, and for the few months that it was on Monday nights, basically proved they couldn't go toe-to-toe because they tried to recapture the magic of Nitro, of you never know who's going to show up on Nitro. They tried to recapture that magic by saying you never know who's going to show up on Impact. And it failed. It failed. And again, the positives. Again, you had some good positives. Taking Impact out of the Impact Zone and on the road was a positive. The only thing that turned that positive into a negative is what I'm trying to say. The only thing that turned that positive into a negative was the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that TNA did not book in the right arenas. They did not book in the arenas and venues they needed to book in to have a decent-sized crowd. At first they did for a little bit, and then they started saying, hey, let's go bigger, let's go bigger, let's go bigger. And it backfired, and that's what caused them a lot of pain financially. And you know what? It's not just that either. They started doing these one-night only deals. They would run for a whole month, and they did this all throughout the final week or so. They were leasing Universal Studios Soundstage 21. It was in the final week or so of the run of the time with Soundstage 21 at Universal Studios that they did this, and it cost them a lot because they had to do like 2 or 3 shows a day. They had to do 2 or 3 shows a day, and they had to pay talent to come in for one time only, or for a one-night return, or for a one-show return, just to promote these events. And why? And why? Because they want to substitute for what, again, was a good positive. They want to substitute for the pay-per-views they had to let go. Yeah. You see, one of the major positives I'll give Bischoff and Hogan credit on is now we were back to 4. You had Genesis, Lockdown, Slammiversary, and Battle for Glory as your main pay-per-views, as the ones you should focus on building towards more than anything. Genesis, your beginning pay-per-view, your first pay-per-view of the year. Lockdown, your spring pay-per-view. Your summer pay-per-view, which was Slammiversary, and your fall pay-per-view, which was Battle for Glory. Those are the pay-per-views you need to focus on, and I give Bischoff and Hogan the credit that they helped TNA realize that. But what do they do instead to screw themselves financially? They decide, okay, we're not going to have 12 pay-per-views in a row. Let's give everybody these one-night only deals. Let's have them pay about $15, which isn't a bad price. But also, let's bring in talent for one show return, for one night only returns, or one show only returns or debuts in our company. You know, and pay, let's bring them in and let's pay them. Let's pay the Bob Hollies. Let's pay the Funakis. Let's pay these people. Let's bring them in for one show only, or one night only returns, and then pay them, and that's it. And let's do all these one night only deals in our last week in Universal Studios Soundstage 21. Let's do that. Yeah, good concept, one night only. Bad idea to do it in 1 week and bring in all these talents and then pay these talents, and then in the long run probably end up being late on paying your established talents. The fact is, folks, the positive of taking TNA on the road also turned into a negative. Because when you add in the fact that they had to spend a lot of money in the last week that they Soundstage 21 at Universal with these one night only events, and they had to basically, ladies and gentlemen, pay these one-time talents. I mean, not one-time, but these one-night debuts and returns of talents that were coming in for these one-night only deals. Not only did that cause them to financially be late on paying the established talent, but it caused them financially not to have the money to really afford to be in the venues they were booked in. It basically blew up in the face, and that turned a positive of taking Impact Wrestling on the road into a negative. And this was all done, believe it or not, all of this was done during the whole Bischoff Hogan era of the past 4 years. The whole Bischoff Hogan era. And you could say that's not true, but it is. It is true. A lot of people look at it that way. A lot of people look at it that way. And not only that, but you took what was considered probably the best women's division in all of wrestling, and you've reduced it to what it is. And some people will say it's all Bruce Pritchard. And you know what? Maybe it was Bruce Pritchard. You know, maybe he was a spy sent by WWE to sabotage TNA's certain areas of pure gold. fact is, ladies and gentlemen, it was still but the fact is, ladies and gentlemen, whether Bruce Pritchard was hired on and sent down there and hired on, I mean, sent down there as a spy by WWE and hired on to basically sabotage areas of pure gold, like the Knockouts division for TNA, or not, or whether he just didn't feel the Knockouts division could, be anything. It was still done during the Hogan Bischoff era. So that was another negative. You basically took a very established Knockouts division and reduced it to what it is now. So the thing is, can TNA, so the question obviously this person had was, can TNA just suddenly move on and forget about the whole past 4 years and act like it never happened? If you're a wrestling fan, you cannot forget. If you're a wrestling fan and a pure TNA enthusiast, a pure TNA Impact Wrestling enthusiast, then you cannot forget those past 4 years, or anything that's happened in front of the camera or behind the scenes. But apparently TNA wants to move on and act like it never happened. Well, guess what, TNA? Nobody's going to forget. And that's one thing you got to realize. If you want people to really forget, you're going to have to do your damnedest to make sure that happens. So, I mean, the fact that during this regime you had several contracts nearly slip through the cracks, like Ruse, almost with Styles, that you let go of people like Mickie James and Tara, two established women veterans in this business that not only help the Divas division, women's/Divas division in WWE, get the success that it kind of currently has right now with their presence there. But you let them go. You let them go. And this is all during the whole Bischoff Hogan deal. And then you got this whole thing with Jesse Sorensen. I mean, a guy that obviously you were going to build up as your next big star. Let's not lie about that. Let's not lie about that. You were going to build him up as your next big star for not just the X Division, but for your company. The fact is, nobody's going to forget what's happened in the past 4 years. With everything I've mentioned, positive, negative, and what I've just talked about, no one's going to forget it, especially if they're a pure TNA fan or a pure wrestling fan in general. So TNA, if they're going to try to make us forget, they're going to try to do their damnedest to make it happen. And that's all I'm going to say, folks. So I will provide the link down below in the description box. You guys can read it yourself. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think TNA can just forget about the past 4 years of the Hogan Bischoff era? Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you later.